Hello guys, welcome back. I'm James for Kit Guru and I'm really starting to get into the festive spirit with all these build videos lately, and today we've got another one for you. The main purpose of that is to show off all this new XPG gear from ADATA. The main focus will be this new case. This is the XPG Defender Pro, brand new case from XPG. It's a kind of compact mid-tower chassis. It measures just under 500mm tall by 440mm deep by 220 wide. It takes up to eATX motherboards, so that obviously includes eATX, ATX, micro ATX and mini ITX. So we'll be having a look at this case in a bit more detail, and then later on we'll be building a system inside. But before we do that, I just want to remind you guys that have not subscribed to the Kit Guru channel yet, make sure you do that today. Also hit the like button and hit the bell button for notifications. Do all that YouTube stuff that we're used to. And if you want to help support Kit Guru in other ways, you can always head over to our store, pick up some Kit Guru merch, and you can get in contact with us through our social media channels such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Discord. And as always, head over to the kitguru.net site to catch up on all our latest in-depth hardware reviews and all the latest tech news. So the Defender Pro from XPG is a brand new mid-tower ATX chassis. The main feature of this case is its high airflow configuration. So at the front of the case there is this high airflow mesh front panel, has this kind of unique diamond shape effect to it. There's also some RGB lighting in there, and then at the top there's got this silver or chrome XPG logo. This panel is held to the chassis magnetically, so it removes really easily, and you can see there is a perforated metal mesh on this front panel, so that kind of acts as a primary dust filter, and that'll catch the bigger dust particles. And then behind that there's another dust filter that just lifts the top out and then slide it up. That removes, and that has a much finer woven mesh fabric filter in there, so that'll catch any of the smaller particles that get through the initial outer front panel. And then for front panel connectivity, at the top of the case there's two USB 3.0 Type A connections, a single hybrid 3.5mm audio jack for your headphones and your microphone. There's also a reset button and a power button up here. One thing that's missing from this front panel, which we would like to see in new cases, is a USB Type C connection, so that's a little disappointing. And then behind the front panel, the high airflow theme continues with a very large open vented section. That again is protected from dust using this perforated metal mesh filter, and that just sits in place, held in position with magnets. It's up to you whether you run that mesh filter or not. If you're having airflow coming in from the top, then I'd suggest using that filter. If not, you don't need to do it, and you can have higher airflow with that filter removed. And then if we just turn the case around, you can see there's a full tempered glass side window. This is 3mm thick tempered glass, and it does have a mild tint to it. It's held in position at the back with two thumb screws, so just remove the screws, slide the panel backwards, and then it just lifts out. And then inside the case, at the bottom, which is typical these days, is a full cover power supply shroud. It does have a window or a cutout at the bottom there, so if you've got an XPG power supply, you'll see the XPG logo or whatever down there. Also at the front of the power supply shroud there is a cutout for a radiator. At the front of the case you can fit up to a 360mm radiator, so that includes a 280 and a 240, or alternatively you could put three 120mm fans in there or two 140mm fans. And then in the roof of the case, that supports the installation of up to a 240mm radiator or two 120mm fans or a single 140mm fan. And then in the rear there's just space for a single 120mm fan or a 120 radiator. The case comes with three pre-installed 120mm fans, so at the front you've got two XPG Vento ARGB 120 fans, and at the rear a matching 120, so that's nice to see. They'll all work nicely together with their RGB lighting functions. This left hand side has a real open feel to it. It supports motherboards up to eATX form factor, so that's eATX, ATX, micro ATX and mini ITX. Inside here as well you can fit a CPU cooler up to 170mm tall, graphics cards up to 380mm long, and then underneath that power supply shroud you can fit a power supply up to 220mm long. Then around the back of the case it's a typical layout, a 120mm fan at the top, rear I/O cutout next to that, 7 horizontal PCIe slots, 2 vertical PCIe slots, so vertical mounting of a GPU is an option. And then at the bottom is the typical power supply cutout. Right hand side panel removes in the same way as a tempered glass does, so remove 2 thumb screws from the rear, push the panel to the back of the case, and then just lift it out. Around this right hand side there's approximately 23mm of space for cable management. You can see there's various cable cutouts. Some of them are covered with rubber grommets, some not. And then in terms of storage support, directly on the back of the motherboard tray is mounting points for 2.5-inch SSDs, and then down at the bottom of the case is this hard drive caddy, and that has 2 removable bays, and inside here you can either fit a 3.5-inch or a 2.5-inch drive there, so in total you can have up to 4 storage devices installed in the case. If you need to make more space at the bottom of the case, maybe for a bigger power supply or to get into plugging modular cables in, just remove a few screws from that cage, and then that hard drive cage removes completely. And then on the floor of the case there are some feet that raise the case up approximately 20mm to allow some airflow to the power supply. On these feet there is rubber pads as well, so that should help with any vibrational noise. And then at the back where the power supply fan will be, there's another large vent there and another dust filter to stop dust entering the power supply. So that's the XPG Defender Pro. That will be available to purchase very soon in the UK, and it's available in black or white. So as well as that new XPG Defender Pro case, we've got a bunch of other XPG parts for this system. CPU cooler is this new XPG Levante 240, so 240mm AO, RGB fans, RGB on the pump. This is an ADATA OEM, so installation should be pretty simple. That'll look smart inside the system. We've also got 4 of these XPG Vento 120 RGB fans. We've got 3 of those already inside the case, but we'll try and squeeze as many of these in as we can. These have a speed range of 200 to 1200 RPM. Airflow is around about 45 cubic feet per minute, and noise levels are around about 23 decibels. So RGB, addressable RGB on those as well. So yep, we'll try and squeeze some of them into the system. We have more RGB with this XPG Prime ARGB LED strip kit. There's actually 2 strips in here, and they come with their own, small controller, but they also are compatible with major motherboard brands via a 3-pin 5V ARGB header. And we have even more RGB. These are XPG Prime ARGB extension cables. Yes, cables that light up with RGB. This is a VGA kit, so inside here there's 2 PCIe extension cables, and they'll be lit up in RGB lighting. Some kind of fiber optic sleeving allows them to light up in RGB, so interesting. I'm going to have a look at those. And there's also a 24-pin ATX connector as well, so we're going to have a 24-pin cable that is lit up with RGB lighting. And then to go with our Ryzen 5000 build, we've got some of this XPG Spectrix D50 Extreme RAM, high speed 4800 MHz, DDR4. These kits are 16GB kits, 2x8GB modules, CL19 latency, and we've got 2 of them, so 32GB in total. That is probably more designed for an Intel platform, but it'll be interesting to see at what speed we can run those on our AMD B550 motherboard. And as well as that, we have this Gamix S50 Lite 1TB PCIe Gen 4 x 4 NVMe SSD, and this has a nice heatsink design that kind of matches those memory modules, but the memory modules have RGB lighting. This doesn't. So we know that this is going to be based on Ryzen 5000. So for the motherboard, we have this B550 Aorus Master motherboard. Probably need to update the BIOS on that because we have this AMD Ryzen 9 5900X. Can't wait to see how that performs. I've not used any Ryzen 5000 yet, so I'm looking forward to that. And then for graphics, we've got the Gigabyte RTX 3080 Eagle. And then powering the system, We have a XPG core reactor 750 gold. It's an 80 plus gold certified power supply, and that should just give us enough juice to run that RTX 3080. So let's get on with this build and see how it turns out. And we are done. I think that is probably the most RGB I've ever thrown at a system, and currently there's a disco going on inside my PC. So I managed to cram in as much RGB as possible. Up front we have 3 of those Vento 120 ARGB fans. There's another one of those in the rear, and then 2 on the CPU cooler radiator. I'm actually running that in a push-pull configuration with the fans that came with it on the top. The AIO pump, that's also got some RGB lighting, and we've also used both of the XPG Prime ARGB LED strips. They're kind of running around the front of the case. What else do we have? Oh, the cable extensions as well. Used both those cable extensions. So it's currently running in this kind of disco looking party mode, but you can obviously use the RGB Fusion software or whatever motherboard software you have this connected up to, and you can change all the different RGB settings, and you could just run a solid colour if you want. But to show it off in its best way, I thought we'd go for this disco party mode. Let us know what you think about that in the comments section, and if there's any questions you want answering about how all this was installed, let me know in the comments section and I'll do my best to answer your questions. The installation as a whole went pretty well. There's a couple of things worth mentioning. The small button on the top that I said was a reset button, that's actually a button to switch through the different RGB lighting settings if you have all your RGB connected up to that. And the hard drive cage down under the power supply shroud, I mentioned that that was removable. It's actually adjustable, so you can adjust it to 3 different positions. You could potentially remove it, but it's not easy to do that. You'll probably have to damage it or destroy it to remove it completely from the case. And then in terms of the build, that all went pretty smoothly. I'm quite happy with how the case is laid out. There's plenty of space for a long graphics card, as you can see, with the RTX 3080 installed. The only slight gripe is the space for cable management at the rear, just 23mm. It's not a massive amount of space, but you have to take into account that I have so many cables here with all this RGB. Maybe with just a regular system it'll not be as difficult, but it still turned out pretty well. There's plenty of cable cut out, and there's plenty of places to tie the cables down, so that's a plus point. It's just really the depth of the space that you have available. Could just do with it probably another 5-10mm would have been absolutely ideal. And as with every system build that I do, I like to take a look at the thermal performance. So I'm going to run a quick thermal performance test using ADATA 64 stress test, stressing the CPU and the GPU, and I'll see what the thermal performance is like with this vented front panel on, and then I'll remove that and see what difference it makes, if any. We currently have the CPU running at its stock frequencies and voltages, and the memory is running at 3600 MHz CL18. That's quite a way off its XMP profile, but that is aimed more at Intel platforms rather than this AMD B550 platform. Let's fire up that ADATA 64 stress test and take a look at this thermal performance. Okay, so the ADATA 64 stress test has been running for 30 minutes with the case in its default configuration, so that means both case side panels are installed and with the high airflow front panel installed as it would come out of the box. And then the same stress test was run again for a second time with the front panel removed, just to see what effect removing that front panel has on the thermal performance, and to see just how well that front panel flows cool air. And as you can see from the chart on screen, there's just a few degrees difference between the default configuration and removing that front panel. There is a slight improvement in the CPU temperature with the front panel removed, so a little bit more cool air is being allowed to flow to that top mounted AIO with the front panel removed, but the GPU temperature remained pretty consistent with the front panel installed or removed. In terms of availability, the XPG Defender Pro will be available early in the new year, so January 2021, and the MSRP of this will be $99, so that's probably £70-80 in the UK, and that puts it in that kind of mid-range price bracket where there's a lot of competition. So overall it's not a bad looking case. Quite like that diamond effect design front panel. Airflow is as good as probably any other high airflow case. Build quality is alright for this price range, and you can obviously fit a lot of RGB inside. Let us know what you think of this XPG Defender Pro case and of all these other XPG parts in the comment section below. I hope you've enjoyed watching this build video. If you have, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, and hit the bell button for notifications. Do all that YouTube stuff. And if you want to help support Kit Guru in other ways, make sure you head over to our store, pick up some Kit Guru merch. We'd really appreciate the help. And as always, you can connect with us through our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can head over to our Discord channel. And don't forget, there's always the kitguru.net website where you can catch up on all our latest in-depth technical reviews and all the latest tech news. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.